Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points tonight. The big talking point, the goods and services tax hike on food items has sparked off a political war in Parliament and outside. Who is responsible for hiking GST rates? That's going to be a big talking point on the news today. Also, the Shiv Sena has now virtually split in Parliament today. The new Shiv Sena parliamentary leader, Rahul Shewale, will be among my guests tonight. He'll tell me what lies ahead. But first, as always, the 9 headlines at 9 tonight. The rupee weakens past 80 to the dollar, recovers to 79.96 only after RBI intervention. Upcoming US Federal Reserve meeting and firm crude oil prices continue to weigh on sentiment. Fierce war breaks out between the government and opposition over GST hikes in food items. Opposition forces adjournment over the issue, demands a debate. Finance Minister claims opposition FMs were on board on the hikes. Supreme Court offers some relief to suspended BJP Neta Nupur Sharma for her profit remark, grants her interim protection from arrest till the 10th of August in the 9 FIRs lodged against her. Haryana cop is mowed down by the mining mafia in Nu. One accused shot in an encounter with the police. Chief Minister Khattar assures that DSP Surinder Singh's killers will not be spared. Former Mumbai top cop arrested in a National Stock Exchange scam by the Enforcement Directorate. Sanjay Pandey charged with money laundering. After Mumbai, Shiv Sena is now split wide open in Delhi. 12 MPs choose Rahul Shewale as their leader. Back Eknath Shinde insists that they are the real Shiv Sena. Salem SP and collector transferred after violent protests break out in Tamil Nadu over a class 12 student suicide. SIT to probe what triggered the rioting. A big India Today impact. Sanitation worker who was sacked after the Prime Minister and Yogi's picture was found in the garbage has now gotten his job back. We'll tell you Bobby's story. And Europe in the grip of a record-breaking heat wave. Temperatures top 40 degrees for the first time in UK. Wildfires ravage parts of France. But first to the big story that's breaking this evening. Former Mumbai Police Commissioner of Police, he was Commissioner till just a few months ago, Sanjay Pandey, has been arrested by the Enforcement Directorate. Pandey has been named as an accused along with former NSE CEO Chitra Ramakrishna and Ravi Narayan in the National Stock Exchange co-location scam. Pandey ran a security company and the allegation is that he was tapping the phones of several traders from whom big monies could be made. That's the big story that's breaking at the moment. Munish Pandey is to join us. Remember, the phones of NSE employees were allegedly tapped and the allegation is that that was then used to pass on information out of which crores of rupees could be made. Sanjay Pandey had been police commissioner till just a few months ago. Remember, when the government changed, the police commissioner also changed. Sanjay Pandey was also DG earlier in Maharashtra. So a senior police officer now finds himself on the dock in the NSE scam, where already Chitra Ramakrishna has been arrested, the NSE chairperson. So that's the big story that's breaking at the moment. We'll have more details on that later. Let's turn from there to our other big story, where the opposition is targeting the government in Parliament over the revised goods and services tax rates, which in a sense mean that food items, especially pre-packaged food prices, have risen. The opposition disrupted proceedings in the Parliament, demanding a debate on the tax rate hikes. The centre, led by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, is accusing the opposition of misleading the people, claiming that all opposition finance ministers were also on board when the price hike was decided. Rahul Srivastava brings you tonight's top story.
Hiked taxes on essentials will worsen the inflation injuries of the Aam Aadmi, is the opposition's new war cry. The opposition is using the hike in GST that came into effect Monday to unite and target the Modi government from Sansad to the Sarak.
सारे अपोजिशन नेता भी यहाँ पर है और उन्होंने माना कि ऐसे जो प्राइस राइज के ऊपर एजिटेशन हो रहा है, इन्फ्लेशन के ऊपर हो रहा है और जो अन्याय छोटे मोटे चीज़ों पे है, जो दूध है, दही है, पनीर है, ये ऐसे चीज़ों पे रोज़मर्रा चीज़ें हैं, एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज़ है, इस पे जो टैक्स GST टैक्स उन्होंने लगाया है उसके बारे में हम अंदर जाकर अपनी बात भी रखेंगे और लड़ेंगे।
कभी भी आटा, दाल, चावल, मुरमुरे, छाछ, दही, मखाने पूजा के इन पे टैक्स नहीं लगा। आप तो पाप कर रहे हो। आटे को भी हम कमाल कर रहे हो, आटा छीनना चाहते हो।
But was the GST hike born in Modi government stables? The answer is no. The key is who proposed the hike and why. Tax hike on items like cereal, pulses, flour, curd, buttermilk, etc. was initially proposed by a fitment committee set up by the GST Council. The proposers included officers from opposition-ruled Rajasthan, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra and NDA-ruled Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, Haryana and Gujarat. Next, a group of ministers with representatives from opposition-ruled West Bengal, Rajasthan, Kerala and NDA-ruled Uttar Pradesh, Goa, Bihar proposed a hike. The hike was cleared in the GST Council meet on 28th and 29th June. The meet was attended by ministers and officials of 18 NDA and 12 opposition-ruled states and UTs. The centre says there was no dissent or opposition to the tax hike.
There was no opposition to any increase or anything to do with the rate. There was not one. In fact, as was the suggestion given by the fitment, more or less on everything, it was all right, it should go through. There were ministers who even said it should just go into agreement, all of us can agree, there is nothing, they are all very well done reports.
Bengal Finance Minister Chandrima Bhattacharya contests the Finance Minister's claim.
GOM meeting was done virtually. There also we had opposed on behalf of West Bengal for this price hike of the daily things used by people. And at the GST Council meeting also we had vehemently opposed the rate of tax, enhancement of rate of tax or the imposition of tax.
So did the centre and NDA-ruled states bulldoze a tax hike? Did the opposition-ruled states and minority have no instrument to block it or register dissent? The answer is yes, they had no option. To register dissent against tax hike on essentials, states opposed to it could have sought a vote in GST Council. Kerala, for example, had pushed for a vote on a tax on lottery on 18 December 2019 in the 38th GST Council meet. The centre also points out that during the pre-GST era, states used to levy VAT on all items. The tax hike is yet another episode of political discord over the economics of GST. Issues like compensation, revenue generation, dispute resolution continue to divide, while the wonder tax was mandated to be a unifier. With Rahul Srivastav, Bureau Report, India Today.
So just let me tell the viewers, how is GST decided? How is it that certain tax rates are fixed? Remember, the GST Council was seen by the Modi government as its big change in indirect tax. Tax rates are decided by GST Council. In the GST Council, the Union Finance Minister and State Finance Ministers are all members. At least 50% members should be present for a valid meeting. 75% of the weighted votes of attendees are needed to clear a decision. The centre's vote has a weight of 1/3 of total votes. States' votes has the weight of 2/3 of the total votes cast. So you need an element of consensus before these major decisions are taken. Let me ask the big questions then. This GST hike, who is responsible for it on pre-packaged foods, in particular on atta? Why didn't the opposition block the GST hike at the council meeting? Is the opposition therefore guilty of hypocrisy? Or is the middle class simply caught between the opposition and the government? Why a GST hike amidst inflation? Some of the questions we'll raise. Supriya Srinath is the Congress's spokesperson. Sanju Verma of the BJP joins me. Rohit Jain is partner economic laws practice and an indirect tax expert. And Rahul Srivastav tracks GST Council meetings and is our national affairs editor. Sanju Verma, let's start with you. And I would appreciate if answers are kept short. Just very quickly, Sanju Verma, do you concede that the government cannot pass the buck on this to the opposition? The GST Council is recommendatory in nature. The government, if it wanted, in the midst of an inflation, where retail inflation is above 7%, wholesale above 15%, could have said, no, we are not going to raise taxes at the moment on pre-packaged food items. We want to give the middle class a break. Would you concede that the government could have taken that line or not?
Rajdeep, it was a rather lengthy but a very pertinent question. Without beating around the bush, let me tell you one thing very, very clearly. Lose dal, lose atta, lose lassi, lose curd, lose suji, lose maida, lose rava, lose pulses. These attract 0% GST. Now you might wonder, what is it then that will be taxed at 5%? Nirmala Sitharaman has today tweeted out and explained at length. Rajdeep, branded suji, branded atta, branded pulses, branded oats, branded maize were always taxable at 5%. All that we are saying now is to cut down on tax leakages, not just branded suji, not just branded atta, not just branded lassi, not just branded dahi, but pre-packaged and pre-labeled food items. Now, does this mean that for a Rajdeep Sardesai or a Sanju Verma, the net impact after 5% on pre-packaged and pre-labeled foods is higher? No. This is only to curtail tax leakages and it is revenue.
No, many people buy Sanju Verma, I don't know about you, but I certainly use pre-packaged dahi. To say that, to suggest that pre-packaged items should not be seen as having been hiked,
May I please finish?
Yes.
You don't like to be heckled, but you have this habit of heckling me. I will take only 30 seconds more. The point is, the 5% GST on pre-packaged, pre-labeled food is revenue neutral, will not generate extra revenue for the government, but will plug tax leakages. You spoke about inflation. In the last 8 years, retail inflation under the Modi government on an average has been 4.9%. Under the Congress, it was 8.4%. And I will quickly just tell you one thing. When Rajdeep, you used to go out and eat prior to 2017 when GST was implemented. In restaurants, we used to pay service tax and other charges to the tune of 28%. Today, whether you eat in an AC restaurant or non-AC restaurant, GST is 5%. On affordable homes, GST is 1%. On non-affordable luxury homes, GST is 5%. Do you know something? When Arun Jaitley brought in GST by taking opposition into confidence, the entire opposition, state, BJP rule, non-BJP rule, we had agreed that in 5 years or 6 years down the line, the revenue neutral rate will be 15.5%. But do you know today what the revenue neutral rate is? 11.4%. So we are actually charging much lower than what we had envisaged when we started to implement GST.
Okay.
So I think opposition has lost its moral credibility. They want to rake up issues क्योंकि चुनाव जीतना तो आता नहीं है.
Okay, you made your point. Let me also say that retail inflation has successively over the last year and more remained well above the RBI's rate. I am talking about today, ma'am. I am talking about in the last 1 year. Okay, let Supriya Srinath respond.
8.4%.
Okay, Supriya Srinath, you want to respond? The strong point that Sanju Verma makes is that she is comparing inflation today to what it was in the Manmohan Singh years. But more importantly, the question that you will have to answer, your finance ministers were there at that meeting when these hikes were decided. Why didn't you all raise a red flag then?
Do economics is that you do something, then you have to put out a 14-tweet thread to explain it.
A 14-tweet thread to explain it. you can hardly convince anybody because you haven't been able to convince your own Prime Minister. And just for the benefit of your viewers, I will play a 40-second audio bite of the Prime Minister from way back in 2019. Please listen to this bite and explain to your people what the Prime Minister is trying to say.
Please keep it near your mic.
गेहूं, चावल, दही, लच्छी, छाछ इस पर भी टैक्स लगता था। आज ये सब जीएसटी के बाद टैक्स फ्री हो गए।
This is the Prime Minister of the country telling the world that 2019 के बाद, this is a bite from 2019 where he is telling everybody पहले टैक्स लगता था, मैंने सब टैक्स फ्री कर दिया है। Is Nirmala Sitharaman not being able to convince the Prime Minister, or is the Prime Minister lying to the country? This is the result of voodoo economics, if you ask me. I will answer the direct question on inflation and then I will answer your question on why the Finance Minister's stance and why we are protesting. The problem with people who come here and, you know, eloquently quote numbers is, inflation is not in isolation. What is the real rate of growth? What is the GDP growth that the BJP can quote in the last 8 years? And what is the level of inflation minus that is the real level of growth? They will never be able to answer that question because growth under them has completely plummeted. No jobs, no investments, which is why growth is plummeting. Forget about that. The real problem, Rajdeep, is when Nirmala Sitharaman turns around and blames the opposition states for being a part of those meetings and now protesting, she undermines two things. She undermines Parliament, where every issue regarding the common man can be raised irrespective of whatever stand a finance minister may have taken or even a state finance minister have taken. The price rise is a real issue of our times.
Sure, but why was it not raised?
How do you expect Parliament not
why
to
was it
discuss
not raised by your finance ministers in that GST council?
I'm answering your question.
Rajdeep, this cannot be a monologue. You've given a long time.
Ma'am, don't intervene, Sanjuji. Sanjuji, you cannot intervene.
No, you cannot
spoke for
have
5.5 minutes.
No, she will speak.
You have to be fair.
Please,
You gave
producer,
her a monologue.
everyone will have the same time. Go ahead. Go ahead, Supriya.
GST Council is recommendatory in nature. Nobody knows the macroeconomic situation better than India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Why did she allow that to be endorsed? I would want to ask. Does she not know rupees falling is going to worsen inflation? Does she not know CPI is above 7% consistently? I also want to tell you the truth that they're not telling you. If the packaged item is more than 25 kg, then there is no GST on it. Who's buying less than 25 kg? Atta, dal, chawal, tel, 25 liter या 25 kg से ऊपर है तो कोई GST नहीं है. उसके नीचे है तो GST लगेगा. Who's buying it? The lower middle class and the poor. I also want to understand who in India is now buying loose ration items only in PDS shops. Everybody else is buying packaged items. Why are you penalizing them? The third important point, and it's a very important point to make here, shouldn't packaging be promoted? Shouldn't people have access to hygienically packaged products? You are essentially disincentivizing the poor.
Why did you not raise this? Why did your finance ministers not raise this? Ma'am, why did your finance ministers not raise this? All the points you're making could have been raised by Congress and opposition finance ministers.
If you read, interesting question. Let me please finish. Interesting question. If you read the Twitter thread of Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman ji, 12 of 14 and 14 of 14 talks about consensus. The word unanimous that was spoken up until now is suddenly missing its consensus, which means people objected, and which is why consensus was built. This wasn't a unanimous decision.
Okay.
This was brought to the council right under the nose of Ms. Sitharaman. She could have well said no. And one more flaw. There is no GST, there is no input tax credit that you get on milk. You are going to put GST on lassi and on dahi. The prices will be passed on. It's exactly the same for every commodity. The problem with voodoo policy making is that the left arm doesn't know what the right is doing. The small traders are doomed because they are not a part of the GST.
Okay, I want to stop you for a moment.
Your time is up. For penal action right now.
Your time is up. Otherwise, Sanju Verma will say that I'm giving you extra time. But I'm joined at this moment by Dr. Amit Mitra. Dr. Amit Mitra, remember, was one of those architects in a way of this GST system, former finance minister, now financial advisor to Mamata Banerjee, West Bengal chief minister. Dr. Mitra, is the GST regime in a way under strain that all the states want excess revenues out of the GST regime and therefore they are not objecting to these hikes? because hikes mean more revenues. And because states are struggling with their revenues, it's not just the center, but state governments are also accepting these hikes. And the GST regime itself has come under strain as a result.
Rajdeep ji, let me give you a few points. First of all, it is important for your viewers to understand that the center has decided to stop compensating the states. I had written a formal letter to the Union Finance Minister, which I think your channel and others also carried, where I clearly said to the Union Finance Minister that as chairman of the Empowered Committee of Finance Ministers, when GST was created, when Mr. Arun Jaitley was the Union Finance Minister, we took a 5-year period. In the 5-year period, there was no question of a COVID, a global pandemic, which cost us 3 years. So the question is, we must increase the period of compensation for another 3 years at least. Now, just to give you an idea, we have 9 more months to go in this financial year. No compensation to the states, which means over 1.5 lakh crores, 1.5 lakh crores will be required by the states for compensation. Without, where are they going to raise this money from? Now, you're saying that these rates can be raised. There is a group of ministers, GOM, chaired by the Chief Minister of Karnataka, who's a BJP Chief Minister. Now, they have not been able to come to a consensus. Why? Not a decision even. Why? Because they know that the minute these rates are going up, where the Modi government has failed in the inflationary area, immediately it will trigger inflation. You increase GST, all prices will go up. So this is one point. The second
why were ministers, including Bengal's ministers, silent? Why did they not raise their voice?
They were not silent. They were not silent. Our position was absolutely clear that this is not the time, from the macroeconomic perspective of any economist you ask, when inflation is raging, unemployment raging, rupee has hit the worst condition of 80 rupees a dollar. Foreign institutional investors are pulling out of the country. In this environment of almost chaotic condition, do you want to trigger a rise in GST rates, which will then result in absolutely accelerating process, adding to the inflation vis-a-vis oil and everything else?
So what's the solution?
This was an inoptimal macroeconomic time when countries going through a crisis.
Right.
Why have foreign investors run away? The largest running away in recent times. Mr. Modi must know that. He's going all over the world propagating for India and hugging leaders and so on and so forth with good intention. What is the fact? Fact is, foreign institutional investors are pulling out of India at a massive rate. So rupee is now at a state. Mr. Modi himself had criticized the last government on the question of rupee going up by a little bit, 53 rupees a dollar.
So
today it is 80 rupees a dollar.
So can I?
He's silent.
Can I just sum
we have a crisis. My submission to you,
yes, go ahead.
Rajdeep ji, is this the time that you start tinkering with GST rate when your compensation period needs to be increased first? So state finances are ruined. No state in the country will reach anywhere close to the protected revenue, which was the guarantee given when the GST was introduced. In fact, today GST has become a major, it's got stuck in the throat of the nation because it has the compensation to states undermining federalism completely is not been extended by at least 3 years when there was no pandemic. I was the chair of the committee. Meeting held in Kolkata. Arun Jaitley was upstairs. He came down and we all had a consensus. There was no pandemic in view. There was no 3 years lost. So what stops the government? By the way, they were not giving us money. They were borrowing from the Reserve Bank and back-to-back transferring the debt to the states, which means state was bearing the burden. Why can't you continue the back-to-back borrowing of the compensated amount. There is no argument in favor against that. My question is, understand the macro picture. The economy is in a state of complete tailspin, with rupee reaching 80, inflation going up, and ruin of the informal and unorganized sector, are very difficult times for small and medium enterprises, and not being able to compensate the states for the protected revenue guaranteed when the GST was introduced. What is GST?
I'm going to leave
If
it
the
there.
state
Dr.
finances
Mitra,
collapse.
Dr. Mitra, you've in a sense expressed the anger and the anguish that state governments have, especially opposition-ruled governments which are claiming they're not being compensated enough. And you are claiming significantly tonight that many of the state finance ministers had objected to the hikes at a time where inflation is high. This is not the time.
Including the BJP states have privately told me, because they're all my friends in the GST Council.
Right.
They all are telling us, please fight for compensation.
Okay.
Otherwise, our financial condition will collapse, just as any other states. They cannot say it publicly because of the nature of the regime you have. But they are privately telling us, please fight for us.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there, Dr. Mitra. I appreciate your joining us because you've given us some perspective in a way of someone who's an insider into this regime. Thank you very much. But Sanju Verma, let me therefore turn to you. You've heard now that even some BJP finance ministers in private are saying don't do it. And yet the government has gone ahead with it. And at this time, at a time when retail inflation is at 7.01%, was this the time? What was the compulsion? Sanju Verma is a question that will be asked and should be asked.
Rajdeep, you allowed uninterrupted time to Amit Mitra. The Congress panelists, spoke non-stop. I will take very little time to nail the bluff of the opposition. First and foremost, every year since GST was implemented, states have been getting every year 2.19 lakh crore as GST compensation. On top of that, every month they get 9,700 crores as revenue deficit grant, point number one. So Amit Mitra needs to go back and learn basic economics. West Bengal and Kerala have been getting the highest GST compensation from the central government. Now the big, narrative about what has Modi government done for middle class, it has done nothing. I will just say
No. The narrative is not that. That is not the narrative. The narrative is why now. You have not answered my question. What was the imperative to do this hike now? Don't change the goalposts.
Rajdeep, I am not changing the goalposts. You are an anchor, not a propagandist. You allowed a free run to Amit Mitra. He spoke about how the economy is in ruin. Let me just take 30 seconds, please. Let me tell you that foreign direct investment was $84 billion last year. The year prior to that, $83 billion. Today, our tax to GDP ratio is just 11.7%, whereas ideally, any tax expert will tell you that an economy which is $3 trillion plus should have tax to GDP of 20%, which means we are an under-taxed economy. And this whole narrative about unemployment, Rajdeep, 10 seconds. Under the Mudra Yojana, we have given 19 lakh crore to 35 crore entities. 35 crore people are today self-employed.
I am not debating the state of the economy, madam. I am debating inflation, rising prices. You have not answered my question. What was the imperative to do it now? Forget everything else.
Can you, Rajdeep, stop interrupting?
No, I am giving you 30 seconds to answer this.
Do you want the BJP's views or do you want to be a heckler? Are you an anchor or a professional heckler?
No, please, ma'am. Again, you are targeting me.
No, because you are running an agenda.
I take strong objection to these words.
I need my 30 seconds.
You answer my question.
I need my 30 seconds.
You answer my question.
Yes. I will answer what I have to answer because you asked Amit Mitra to say that the economy is in ruins and you want...
He didn't say the economy is in ruin. He did not say that.
Let me tell you, Rajdeep Sardesai, lot has been, spoken about the rupee touching 8080. Basically, the rupee has depreciated by 7% in the last 1 year. The euro, the British pound and the Japanese yen have depreciated by between 12 to 14%. Supriya Shine is laughing shamelessly. We did 8.9% GDP growth last year. IMF says in the coming year India will be the fastest growing economy. कांग्रेस का तो ये हाल है, चुनाव हारने की इन्होंने ठान ली है.
Ma'am, okay, producer,
there are tigers in TV studio.
Okay, there are tigers in TV studio. Supriya, you didn't answer my question. What was the imperative to raise GST at this moment? No answer to that. But Supriya Srinath, as you heard from Amit Mitra, can we therefore expect that the Congress finance ministers will also show the red flag? Are the Congress finance ministers willing to accept that they went along with the even on petrol prices? The fact is, the duty structure in most Congress states is way higher than BJP ruled states. All of you want excess revenue. There is a revenue crisis, and you're passing it on to middle class people, including myself. I insist I'm middle class, and I believe that you're passing it on to us.
No, you know that you are wrong, and I'll appreciate your balancing act. I have no issues with that.
No, I don't.
I will though answer
No, what is your duty structure? Which is the Congress ruled state that has brought down taxes?
I am telling you. I am telling you. Now wait. Patience. Patience is the name of the game. First, I want to bust two myths here. This tax-paying India. Everybody in India is paying tax if you are putting GST on things like flour and common flour and dal. Everybody in India is paying GST. So please stop this bogey that the BJP comes and does. Middle class India paying taxes. Everybody in India, from the rickshawala to the richest Indian, is paying the same level of tax on the GST. Firstly, 36% of Mudra loans, by the way, have turned NPA, so they should stop quoting Mudra loans. Now, to answer your direct question, Rajdeep, just to put things in perspective, when late Shri Arun Jaitley got the states to agree to move from VAT to GST, there were two conditions. The first condition was that GST compensation will be given at the rate of 14% protected revenue system. Where is that? A small state like Chhattisgarh is losing 14,000 crore rupees. How do you expect states to function? States have functions to carry out. It's very good for us to sit on our high pulpits, whether in television studios or in parliament, and preach the states like the BJP does. But that is not the solution. A small state like Chhattisgarh is losing 14,000 crore rupees. What is the solution? There were two things that Arun Jaitley had promised: compensation, and the second thing was presumed that economy will be boosted in the next 5 years. That hasn't happened. Economy has crippled. It has ruined under this government.
Can I stop you and Sanju Verma both now? Because as I run over time, I know Rohit Jain, partner economic laws practice, has waited patiently. We had Amit Mitra who came in also for a moment. Rohit, I want you to give a final word. I'm sorry, you've been listening at the moment. What is the truth of it? Is there a way to make sure that the GST system becomes even more transparent and perhaps more effective?
Yeah, so Rajdeep, let me just take first of all, what is this impact of this new set of levies? As has been said, branded atta, dal, all of them were liable to tax even prior to this amendment. Loose goods, that is unbranded, was not liable. So unbranded could be in the two forms. Either it is packed or it is in the loose form. So effectively what has happened now, instead of the concept of branded, now we have gone to the concept of pre-packed and labeled. So pre-packed and labeled is much wider concept than the branded.
Right.
Therefore, the objective which has been stated by the finance minister is that there was some leakage of tax. There was some malpractices which have been followed by the big players, where the branded under the guise of unbranded, the GST has been evaded. Now, the fact that if the purpose is to tax those transactions, can we not amend the definition of branded? Or now to clarify that the packet, which is even the small retailer, small grocery shop who is now selling the packaged sort of atta, dal, that should still continue to be not liable, because that is not appears to be an objective to tax that transaction. And the entire situation which is now been created is that it is been taxed at a smaller class people for the country, and it is the inflation is rising. If the objective is to only tax the evaders, the objective is to tax something which is under the guise of unbranded, selling the branded goods, you could have some other mechanism to clarify that position, or maybe even today give some sort of clarity or exemption that this pre-packaged or labeled does not mean that anything which is just merely packed in a bag will suddenly become liable to GST. I think that's the most important thing, that ideally country is looking at it from this sort of an amendment.
Okay, let me leave it there for now. As I said, there will have to be a wider debate on the way the GST Council at the moment is able to achieve the necessary spirit of consensus that was part of the original GST arrangement between government and opposition ruled states. I know, Sanju, you want to intervene, but I've run completely out of time, dear. I've run completely out of time, and don't blame me and don't call me an agent and with an agenda and a propagandist. I try and do a news show and try and give all of you a chance to be heard. I leave it to the viewer to decide. But I appreciate that all of you have joined us, because I believe this is a subject that in a way affects all of us, including the middle class like me. Okay, let's turn from there to our other big story tonight, because the tussle over who is the real Shiv Sena is far from over. And the party now has split wide open in Delhi as well. Because in another setback today to Team Uddhav Thackeray, Maharashtra Chief Minister Eknath Shinde claimed the support of 12 out of 18 Shiv Sena MPs. That's right. The 12 MPs have approached the Lok Sabha Speaker to appoint them, their nominees, as floor leaders. The Shinde's camp has in fact gone ahead, appointed Rahul Shewale, the Mumbai South Central MP, as the Shiv Sena leader in the Lok Sabha. Uddhav aide Sanjay Raut has hit out and warned of legal action against these defecting MPs. But the fact is, the Shiv Sena is once again split wide open. Listen in to what Rahul Shewale, the new parliamentary party leader of the Shiv Sena, told me a short while ago. The Shiv Sena has split, some would say now, in Delhi also. The parliamentary party, 12 MPs going to the Speaker and saying that they should be recognized as the Shiv Sena with their leader Rahul Shewale, the Mumbai South Central MP, who's with me. Rahul Shewale, am I right in saying Shiv Sena has split? आप में विभाजन हुआ है, you have divided.
नहीं, आप ये गलत कह रहे हैं। शिवसेना स्प्लिट नहीं हुआ है। शिवसेना की जो इंटरनल प्रोसेस है वो हम लोग ने कंप्लीट की है। शिवसेना में एक प्रोसेस है कि अगर आप ग्रुप लीडर चेंज करना है तो जितने भी मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट है उनका ओपिनियन ये काउंट करके ग्रुप लीडर चेंज करने की प्रोसेस होता है। तो उस हिसाब से
ग्रुप लीडर बदला है आपने। 12 MPs, 18 है, 18 MPs are there, 12 have gone and said राहुल शेवाड़े हमारे लीडर हैं। क्या हम माने कि बाकी 6 का, that in a way this is split, क्योंकि आप एकनाथ शिंदे के साथ हैं।
स्प्लिट नहीं है, जो 18
और आप एकनाथ शिंदे के साथ हैं कि
एकनाथ महाराष्ट्र राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री आदरणीय एकनाथ शिंदे साहब जी का नेतृत्व हमने स्वीकारा है, क्योंकि उनकी जो भूमिका है, वंदनीय शिवसेना प्रमुख जी के विचार, धर्मवीर आनंदी साहब के विचार, हिंदुत्व के विचार, और जो शिवसेना बीजेपी के जो हमें मैंडेट मिला है वो मैंडेट, और जो हमारे वोटर है उनकी डिमांड थी कि फिर एक बार शिवसेना बीजेपी एक होनी चाहिए, तो वो मैंडेट का रिस्पेक्ट रखते हुए हमने निर्णय लिया।
लेकिन ये बताइए, आपके पार्लियामेंट्री पार्टी के लीडर तो आप बन गए, यू आर द लीडर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट्री पार्टी। हु इज शिवसेना प्रमुख? आपके लीडर कौन है? उद्धव ठाकरे या एकनाथ शिंदे?
शिवसेना प्रमुख,
स्ट्रेट आंसर।
शिवसेना प्रमुख, कल ही शिवसेना की जो राष्ट्रीय कार्यकारिणी उसकी मीटिंग हुई, उसमें शिवसेना के मुख्य नेता आदरणीय महाराष्ट्र के मुख्यमंत्री एकनाथ शिंदे साहब को घोषित किया गया हुआ है। पक्ष प्रमुख उद्धव जी तो है ही, लेकिन ये जो प्रोसेस है,
उद्धव जी भी है। नहीं, शेवाड़े जी, यू हैव टू बी डायरेक्ट विथ मी। उद्धव जी है या एकनाथ शिंदे हैं? क्योंकि उद्धव, यहाँ संजय राउत ने कहा है कि आप लोग सब गद्दार है, यू आर ऑल ट्रेटर्स। ही इज इवन सेइंग कि आपके घर के बाहर, आउटसाइड योर बंगलोज देयर इज सिक्योरिटी, आपको ईडी का प्रेशर है, इसलिए यू आर गोइंग विद एकनाथ शिंदे।
नहीं,
तो आप उद्धव ठाकरे को फिर भी नेता मानते हैं कि नहीं?
शिवसेना नेता संजय राउत साहब जी जो बोल रहे हैं सब झूठ है, झूठ है। शिवसेना पक्ष प्रमुख उद्धव जी को हम नेता मानते हैं, भविष्य में भी मानेंगे, आखिरी दम तक उनको नेता मानेंगे। लेकिन ये जो प्रोसेस हमने की है वो पार्टी की इंटरनल प्रोसेस है, और ये इंटरनल प्रोसेस में हम लोग ने डिसीजन लिया हुआ है।
आप उनको नेता मानते हैं, संजय राउत आपको गद्दार कहते हैं। मेरा आपसे ये कहना है कि सही सच्चाई क्या है? क्या ईडी का प्रेशर था?
किसी का प्रेशर हमें नहीं है, किसी का प्रेशर नहीं है।
जैसे आपकी जो विप है भावना गवित, उन पर ईडी का केस है,
का केसेस है, वो लीगल प्रोसेस में और वो कोर्ट में पेंडिंग है, तो उसमें प्रेशर नहीं है, किसी का प्रेशर हमें नहीं। हमारा सिर्फ एक ही सिद्धांत है, वंदनीय शिवसेना प्रमुख जी के विचार, धर्मवीर आनंद साहब के विचार, हिंदुत्व, और जो हमें मैंडेट मिला है शिवसेना बीजेपी का, वो मैंडेट का रिस्पेक्ट करते आने वाले दिनों में काम करना।
ये बताइए, आपने कहीं ना कहीं क्या इशारों में हैव यू सजेस्टेड दैट मे बी द शिवसेना कैन कम टुगेदर, कि क्या उद्धव ठाकरे हैज टोल्ड यू कैन ट्राई to bring the Shiv Sena together? क्या ये प्रयास शुरू रहेगा?
उन्होंने कहा था, हमें सभी सांसदों को कहा था, तो हमने प्रयास किया और आने वाले दिनों में भी हम प्रयास करेंगे। सभी को हम चाहते हैं शिवसेना एक होनी चाहिए, लेकिन ये जो बहुत सारे इश्यूज है वो इश्यूज भी सॉल्व होने चाहिए। उसका मैं रीजन बताता हूँ। अगर हम कहते हैं कि शिवसेना एक होनी चाहिए तो और शिवसेना बीजेपी के साथ जाना चाहिए, तो संजय राउत जी की जो भूमिका है महाराष्ट्र विकास आघाड़ी के साथ जाने की, उपराष्ट्रपति मार्गरेट अलवा जी को सपोर्ट करने की, ये सब भूमिका चेंज भी होनी चाहिए। ये भूमिका जब भी चेंज हो जाएगी तो सब एक हो सकते हैं।
You are saying something very important. Uddhav Thackeray has asked you to try to reach out to BJP and form an alliance. Uddhav Thackeray has told you, and you would like an alliance minus Sanjay Raut. Yeah, Sanjay Raut को अलग करके
नहीं, अलग करके नहीं, उनके विचारों को अलग करके, उनके जो विचार है कि कांग्रेस एनसीपी के साथ जाना चाहिए, वो विचारों को अलग करके हम लोग साथ एक साथ आना चाहते हैं।
So you still believe you still will appeal to Uddhav Thackeray to come together?
Yes,
अभी भी आप चाहते हैं कि Uddhav Thackeray बीजेपी के साथ आए?
हम सभी सांसद यही चाहते हैं कि उनको अपील करते हैं कि हिंदुत्व के लिए एक होना चाहिए और मुझे विश्वास है आने वाले दिनों में हो सकते हैं।
एक आखिरी का सवाल, there is talk that you will be a minister. Is this arrangement or now to the extent कि Shiv Sena Shinde faction will get a minister in the NDA government? Because previously आपका एक मंत्री था, अरविंद सावंत was a minister. राहुल शेवाड़े is on his way to becoming a minister.
नहीं, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। हम लोग ने अलायंस
करिए, ये सच्चाई है कि नहीं?
ऐसे कुछ नहीं, हमने एनडीए के साथ जाने का निर्णय लिया। पहले बार मैं यही चीज को दोहरा रहा हूँ, हिंदुत्व, बाला साहब के विचार और जो सेंट्रल और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट में जो कोऑर्डिनेशन होना चाहिए उसके लिए, और हमें विश्वास है महाराष्ट्र राज्य के मुख्यमंत्री आदरणीय एकनाथ शिंदे साहब के माध्यम से ये विकास के काम हो सकते हैं।
And you will support Jagdeep Dhankar? 12 MPs will support Jagdeep Dhankar of NDA, and you will not support Margaret Alva?
All 12 MPs support Jagdeep Dhankar.
You know, Mr. Rahul Shewale, I will try one last time. I am getting the sense that this is one more step towards trying to put pressure on Uddhav Thackeray to come back to NDA. Is that all of this is part of pressure tactics? कि क्या ये पहली सोची हुई समझी रणनीति है? क्योंकि you have said today, Uddhav Thackeray has asked MPs to try to tie up with Mr. Modi and the BJP.
नहीं, ऐसा कुछ ये नहीं है। हम प्रयास कर रहे हैं क्योंकि सब एक होना चाहिए। कुछ स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं है। हमारे सजेशन थे उनके सामने रखे थे और उनके सजेशन हमारे सामने रखे थे। ऐसे कुछ स्ट्रैटेजी नहीं है।
Okay. I just want to ask you therefore, are you on talking terms with Sanjay Raut?
No.
बातचीत होती है?
नहीं, अभी फिलहाल तो नहीं, 1-2 दिन से, लेकिन पहले रोज होती थी।
अच्छा, तो अब वो आपको गद्दार मानते हैं?
नहीं मानेंगे, मुझे तो विश्वास है कि आने वाले दिनों में कौन गद्दार है दिखेगा।
Okay. Rahul Shewale, thank you very much for joining us. So Rahul Shewale, there of the Shiv Sena, their new parliamentary party leader, says this is not a split, says they are the real Shiv Sena, and importantly hopes that Uddhav Thackeray will return to the BJP NDA alliance. We'll wait and see what happens next in the twist of the Mahadrama. Rajdeep Sardesai for India Today. In fact, one of the takeaways I'm now getting, having tracked this Mahadrama, is that the section of the Shiv Sena is pushing Uddhav Thackeray to return into the BJP fold. And apparently they even want Prime Minister Modi to act and intervene and ensure that Uddhav Thackeray comes back and the Shiv Sena reunites. So watch that space. None of them in those interviews are attacking Uddhav Thackeray anymore. The attacks are on Sanjay Raut and on Sharad Pawar. So watch the space in the Shiv Sena. Meanwhile, breaking news coming on that. I interviewed Rahul Shewale about a couple of hours ago, and news coming in now. A 33-year-old woman from Dubai has filed a complaint against Mr. Shewale of rape, mental exploitation and cheating under a false pretext of marriage since 2020 in the Sakinaka police station. So just a couple of hours after he was made the Shiv Sena's leader in the parliamentary party, she claims that the Mumbai police is not registering the FIR against him due to his political clout and connections. So that's the story that's also coming in. She's written an open letter to Eknath Shinde at the moment. MP accused of giving false pretext of marriage. Okay, let's turn from there, from all the drama in Maharashtra to what's happened in Haryana, which is our ground report today. A Haryana police officer was mowed down in Nuh for trying to stop illegal sand mining. DSP Surinder Singh was run over by a dumper truck when he went to conduct a raid. The opposition in Haryana has come out all guns blazing, alleging inaction against the sand mafia. It's our ground report tonight.
Another victim falls to the sand mining mafia. An officer of the law mowed down for trying to put a stop to illegal mining. What began as a tip-off moved on to a raid at Todo Hill and ultimately the DSP Surinder Singh's murder when he was run over by a dumper truck driver.
ओके हुआ क्या था? हाँ, और डंपर से चढ़ा दिया ऊपर। अच्छा, डंपर से चढ़ा दिया। तो ये सुरेंद्र सर के साथ और लोग भी थे कि अकेले थे? वो स्टाफ था साथ में। तो सर ये कितने बजे की घटना है सर? 11:30 बजे।
The manhunt is on for the accused.
बहुत दुखद ये घटना हुई है, हमारी सांत्वना है उनके परिवार के साथ भी, और हम वीर सैनिकों को हमेशा ऐसे मामलों में सबका मनोबल बढ़ाने के लिए भी अपने आप को भी प्रस्तुत करना चाहिए और उस परिवार की भी जिसकी क्षति हुई है उसके साथ भी खड़े हैं।
The search led to an encounter in Noob between the police and the mining mafia suspect.
We have registered a case of 302, 307, 333, 186 IPC and 353 IPC along with 379, 188.
The opposition has come out guns blazing against the Haryana government, alleging inaction against the sand mafia.
आवड़ू में जिस प्रकार से एक डीएसपी हमारे जो नौजवान साथी हैं उनको माइनिंग माफिया ने कत्ल कर दिया, दर्दनाक हत्या उनकी कर दी, इसके बाद मुख्यमंत्री जी को और गृह मंत्री जी को चुल्लू भर पानी में डूबकर मर जाना चाहिए।
This incident is the point of the fact that the government was sleeping and in broad daylight a DSP was mowed down by the illegal mafias. That is the kind of brazenness that they have shown. With video journalist Abhishek, this is Shreya Chatterjee for India Today.
The shocking clout of the sand mining mafia, and it extends in state after state. Today was Haryana, but I recall during the Punjab elections earlier this year, seeing the clout that the sand mafia wielded in some parts of that state too. It extends even in states like Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and others. The sand mining mafia is one of the major problems in several states of this country. Let's take a break. On the other side, we'll bring you an India Today impact. Remember, yesterday we brought you the story of a Mathura civic worker who had been sacked because in his garbage cart there were pictures of Modi and Yogi. Well, today he's been brought back and reinstated. His story when we return. You're watching the news today. News without the noise.
इस समय पूरी दुनिया में लोग कंफ्यूज्ड हैं। वो समझ नहीं पा रहे हैं क्या सही है, क्या गलत है, क्या सच है, क्या झूठ है। और ये स्पष्टता हम आपको अपने इस नए शो में देंगे। सब कुछ ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट में बताएंगे। इस शो में मेरे बालों के अलावा कुछ ग्रे नहीं होगा। हर खबर ब्लैक एंड व्हाइट की तरह बिल्कुल स्पष्ट होगी।
Don't have dollars in our country, and the importing of gas cylinders as well as gas and cooking stoves is very difficult for the country to bear, and therefore now people are again resorting to using various forms of cooking.
මාස දෙක තුනක් තිස්සේම අපිට ගෑස් නැහැ. ගෑස් වලින් තමයි ඉන්නේ. දර වලින් තමයි දැනට උයන්නේ හරිම අමාරුයි. හරි දුකක් විඳින්නේ දර වලින් උයන්නේ ගියාම.
user friendliness of this stove. It's quicker to cook, easy to clean, and emits very little smoke and soot. People now can transition. I'm not saying in the short term, but they can permanently transition from gas and using kerosene to using these stoves, because it provides the same kind of usability as a LPG or a kerosene cooker.
Welcome back. Now, every night we bring you the news as we see it and try and inform you as we can. Some days are better than others. Yesterday perhaps was one such day because a story that we put out has had an impact. Remember, yesterday we told you the story of a Mathura civic worker who had lost his job. Why? Because his garbage cart unintentionally had portraits of Narendra Modi and Yogi Adityanath. Well, after we aired the story, there were protests in Mathura, particularly from the Valmiki Samaj. And guess what? 40-year-old Bobby has got his job back. And that is reason enough to smile and give us some hope that maybe sometimes television news also has an impact, particularly in an age where social media vigilantism results in innocents like Bobby being targeted. Take a look.
Yesterday, Bobby's family was in tears. Today, they are all smiles. The Mathura sanitation worker, who was sacked after photos of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath were found in his garbage cart, has got his job back. The local administration has reinstated him after India Today reported how the 40-year-old was unjustly dismissed from his service based on a viral video. Bobby turned emotional when he learnt about the good news.
मेरी समाज के नेतागण ने और मेरे मीडिया वालों ने जितना मेरा सहयोग किया है, मैं उनका धन्यवाद करता हूं। मेरे बच्चों को जो सेव और आटा मुझसे छीना जा रहा था, वो मेरी समाज और पत्रकारों का मुझ पे बहुत बड़ा वो है उपहार, और उनको धन्यवाद करता हूं। मैं मुझे सेव और आटा दिलवा दिया, उनका बड़ा बड़ा आभारी हूं मैं।
सभी पत्रकार बंधुओं ने, विशेषकर इंडिया टुडे ने जो खबर चलाई 4 मिनट, उस खबर का संज्ञान माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने लिया और उस सफाई कर्मी को तुरंत रूप से बहाल कर दिया गया। मैं श्री राजदीप सरदेसाई जी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा, उनकी खबर का असर हुआ। मैं धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा नगर निगम के अधिकारियों को, माननीय मेयर साहब को, माननीय नगराध्यक्ष साहब को, एक गरीब कर्मचारियों को जिन्होंने सेवाएं पुनः बहाल कर दी हैं।
Misfortune struck Bobby when he was stopped by a group of people who questioned why photos of Modi and Yogi were in his garbage cart.
भैया फोटो निकालो ना आप, किनका है ये फोटो?
Bobby replied he was only moving the garbage he had collected from a dump.
आपके मुख्यमंत्री जी का फोटो है?
As the video went viral, the Mathura civic body sacked Bobby, who was simply doing his job.
मोदी जी का फोटो, माननीय मोदी जी का फोटो आप देखो डस्टबिन में, भारत के प्रधानमंत्री का। भैया क्या नाम है आपका?
While the whole episode leaves a bitter aftertaste, one could say all is well that ends well. With Madan Sharma from Mathura, Bureau Report, India Today.
Chalo, sometimes there's reason enough to smile, and there is a lesson in a sense, particularly for those who are using social media in a manner that unfortunately and unfairly targets innocents like Bobby to serve their own political agendas. Well, I want to leave you tonight with an image of the day. I'm a great Hindi music film buff, as many of you would know. Yesterday, one of the great voices of the Hindi film industry passed away, music film industry, Bhupinder Singh. He had an unmistakable voice, a voice that was rich, and in a prolific career spanning across several decades, sang some truly memorable songs. I'm leaving you with two of them that I will always remember. Haunting songs, Farewell Bhupinder Singh. Good night, goodbye.
ढूंढता है
एक अकेला रात में और दोपहर में आबोदाना ढूंढता है, आशियाना ढूंढता है। एक अकेला फिर वही फुर्सत में रात दिन दिल ढूंढता है, फिर वही फुर्सत में रात दिन बैठे रहे ससुरे जाना किए हुए दिल ढूंढता है, फिर वही फुर्सत के रात दिन दिल ढूंढता है, फिर वही।
I don't read the news. I read between the lines to tell you the true version of events, the true story of our times.
To document grief, the toughest assignment for any journalist to be.
From those who matter,
Women politicians going to stick up for each other.
of those who should matter, I document the truth. I don't distort the truth. I don't glamorize the truth. I don't gloss over the truth.
The ghosts of India's contentious medieval history have come knocking again.
I hustle for the truth, on the ground, in the newsroom, in the studio. I don't try to grab eyeballs.
I inform you to make you see the point.
To the Point with Preeti Chaudhary. At these times, only on India Today.
Today is, the launch to the world of a fully operational urban airport. The first time ever in the world that there's an operational piece of infrastructure of this kind.
I think you'll see some operations this decade, but I think the 2030s will really be the decade of advanced air mobility, and you'll really start to see this be more ubiquitous from that point on.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
You are watching India Today. You are watching